Hey, this is Brooke, functional medicine dietitian specializing in fertility, and this is the Fertility Dietitian podcast, where I help you uncover the barriers that are preventing you from optimizing your fertility and teach you how to work with your body to finally take home a healthy baby. Each week, I will be diving into different topics on fertility and sharing my perspective on physiology, metabolic health, nutrition, and lifestyle approaches that have helped hundreds of couples get pregnant even after years of heartache. My goal is to empower you with the knowledge you need to take back control of your fertility. Happy listening. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Fertility Dietitian podcast. I am chatting with Christina today, who is a graduate of my Master Your Fertility Program. So excited to talk to you, Christina. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I would literally do anything for you. So here we are.
It's been so much fun supporting you. I met Christina in the spring of 2022. So we have had quite a journey together, supporting her. And I'd love for you to share what your fertility journey looked like before we met, and just what led you to seek me for support.
For sure. Yeah. So even before meeting you, had a very long journey. We had been trying naturally for, I think, almost 3 years. And I was just determined to not go the IVF route. I have my whole life been super into organic food and solving everything naturally. So my husband and I were really focused on trying to do that. And in the natural part of our journey, we also did a couple IUIs that didn't end up working. So that was the only kind of thing we tried. But I will say now, looking back on what I was doing, I got so restrictive because I started being so afraid to eat anything. And then my husband and I did, after I think about a year and a half of trying, it was something that I'm sure so many of your patients see. I was unexplained. They just couldn't tell me. All my blood work was perfect. Everything was great. My husband had some lower count and motility stuff, but it was nothing that would get in the way of us conceiving naturally. It just might take a little bit longer, was what the doctor said. But I was still, always looking to optimize. So we did this, we found this dietitian who one of my family members recommended, and we did this 3-month, now looking back, crazy restrictive program where we were eliminating pretty much everything. There was a portion of the diet where for like a month, I was eating like just a little bit of like vegetables and fruit and some meat. And then from that, I got even more restrictive. So I wasn't eating dairy. I was afraid of eating grains, let alone carbs. And I got very, very thin. And yeah, it was a very stressful thing on top of not being able to conceive, that added pressure of researching and not having success and just getting even more narrowed down with what we were doing. And then we did end up doing IVF after those 3 years of trying naturally. And I went into IVF so depleted. I was 31 at the time. And, again, all my blood work was great. The doctor wasn't concerned. He said we'd have incredible results when they did the ultrasound. I had tons of eggs. So he was really excited to get started. And then, we didn't know anything about IVF. We just kind of went into it blind. I usually am a researcher, but I didn't want to know any of the bad news or statistics. So we didn't really ask questions. We just went to this well-known doctor in Orange County and just trusted him completely and ended up not having great results at all. I think they got 8 eggs. 5 of them were mature. And then we made 3 embryos. And then we ended up doing a fresh transfer because we were so impatient. We just want to have a baby. We want to get pregnant. We know IVF's going to work. It's going to be perfect. So we did a fresh transfer. And with that, I don't know how familiar a lot of your listeners are, but that's where you don't do genetic testing. You don't know the quality of the embryo. You just they make the embryo and then put it right back in a couple days later. And I ended up getting pregnant and then miscarrying about a month later, which was the most devastating thing my husband and I've ever been through, for sure. It was so hard, and we have a healthy baby now, but it's still, just a really sad thing to go through. So anyone who's listening, my heart's with you, because it's really hard. But that being said, everything happens for a reason, because it led me to you. I knew that there was something not right with, I knew my body could be healthy and was healthy. It just needed the support that it wasn't getting, and I knew we could get great results. So after that, I took a pause on IVF. It was serendipity that I found you, because none of our friends had gone through IVF before. And so they referred me to following your page on this random couple friend of a friend who we talked to. And then right away when I saw what you were posting, I was like, this is my girl. I have to work with her. And so from there on, that's what led me to you. And that was our journey kind of prior to us working together. Sorry, that was so long-winded. It could be a 45-minute story, but that's as succinct as I can be. I told you I was going to cry, Brooke.
It's totally okay. I mean, I appreciate you taking the time to walk through all of that before we met, because I know so many of my listeners and so many of the couples that I am currently working with, have worked with, resonate with that. Very similar stories, having tried for years, trying to put IVF off, ending up going to IVF, and then not having a great experience, first experience at least, with it. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I know, unfortunately, so many can sympathize with loss as well. And having a loss around that 6-week mark is so common, and it also gives us insight for where to look next and how to better support your body, and so egg quality and female health, but also sperm quality as well, to help decrease loss, additional loss. We of course can't prevent it altogether, but we can do the best we can to try to decrease it from happening again. So I am thrilled that Christina found me at that time. It's been a lot of fun getting to know her and her husband and being able to support them. And we did get to work together for a couple years, right? Before you did welcome your healthy baby boy into the world. So something about Christina is that she is very intuitive. And when she needed a break, she did take a break, which is so hard when you want a baby yesterday, but also it's going to get you to that baby faster, even though it doesn't feel like it in the moment. So we did testing and retesting, and I'll definitely let Christina talk more to that experience that she had. But what would you say, once we did start working together, was one of the biggest initial changes that you ended up making?
I think, first of all, on an emotional level, because through the fertility journey, so much of it is sterilized, and I just knew you wanted this as badly as my husband and I did. So having someone in your corner that feels like family just made it, I think, so much of what women and their partners go through. It's so sensitive, and you're just tightened. And when you're on a call with somebody who you can just kind of drop in and relax and know that they have your best interests, and it's not just, making money, it's a passion for them. So that was first and foremost. I felt so cared for, and that I could trust you too, because everything we talk about, which I love, you always have the evidence and the science to back it up. It's not like just cut dairy or just cut carbs. It's like, there's a reason why we're doing X or Y or Z, and it's very customized too. I think a lot of things you see on Instagram and through research is just blanketed. Everyone should take CoQ10. Everyone should take more folate. But that it was so customized, and so much testing too, that we didn't have access to prior to working together, was also the biggest game changers. Because while, fertility doctors are wonderful and serve their purpose, they don't look under the hood in the same ways that you did to optimize. And my husband, for example, after working with you, before working, he was on Clomid, trying all different supplements and everything. everything kind of had the same results where it didn't improve motility or anything. And then working with you in 3 months, we saw things increase, and he'd been trying for years to move the needle and nothing had worked.
That's such a good point. As far as the customization piece, but also the emotional support piece. I think that is definitely a part of the support team that so many are not getting, unfortunately, because it's not like a traditional part of fertility support when you're going through what I call the conventional fertility protocol. It is very sterilized and you're just literally going step by step, and there's not that emotional support. And that customization piece, I think there's this big misconception that a fertility friendly diet is just a fertility friendly diet and that's what is going to work for everybody, but we have to look at where your body is starting and how to support your individual body in repleting nutrients and getting basically you being able to use those nutrients in a way that are going to better support fertility. So, as Christina mentioned, she was coming in like pretty depleted, which like she now knows because of the restrictions in the diet that she was having. But we also learned that on testing, like where she was actually depleted and how to better support repletion and how just how our body's creating energy and sending those resources to fertility as a whole. So, do you feel like your diet expanded once we started working together?
100%. Yeah, I was looking back before we jumped on just at the meal plans that you had put together for me and comparing to what I was eating before. I remember getting off that call and it took me a couple weeks to recalibrate my brain that grains aren't bad, and carbs aren't bad, right? And that you kind of had me pair for my own case. Obviously, I can't speak for what you find with other patients. Obviously, maybe sometimes that doesn't work for people. But I remember instantly after adding back in carbs with meals and, working with you for a couple weeks, I remember being in a yoga class and being like, oh, I don't feel exhausted. I feel like I have energy now. And I think I was just worn so thin before, and then having that energy boost too. Yeah, and more mental clarity for sure. I also think, whether it was working with you or the diet or a combination of everything too, like you said, I had a lot more patience because, I remember in our intro call that you wanted some people who are committed and, this is going to be a couple months that you kind of have to stick to this. And in my mind, I was like, I want to do a transfer right now before talking to you. And then I was like, no, my body needs time. I really need to wait. And I'm so, so glad I did because, yeah, it all led to baby Casey. So it was all worth it.
Definitely. How old is Casey now?
He just turned 8 months yesterday, and he is so fun. Just all boy, crawling, total maniac. Every morning when we wake up and see him, he's just looking up at us and smiling. And then the second we put him down, he's just smiling from the moment he wakes up to when we put him down. He's just the happiest boy. It's so fun. It was worth every second of the wait, for sure. I remember one of my girlfriends telling me, once you have your baby in your arms, you won't look back on the journey. And I was like, how can that be true? This is so painful when you're in it. I just couldn't imagine not feeling sadness or resentment looking back on our journey. And now having him, I'm like, oh, I would do those 5 years all over again in a heartbeat. Like, no question. I wouldn't have changed a thing now.
Yeah, they are so fun. I mean, and they do arrive. You don't know it when you're going through it, but they arrive at the perfect point in time, the time that they were meant to arrive. So all of those challenges leading to that BFP, but also definitely that healthy baby, definitely in a way starts to make sense for a lot of people.
For sure. And I think, working with you, I'm a better mom too with nutrition and, what I'm feeding him now since we started solids, right? It's just so different than if I hadn't have worked with you and hadn't have learned all of this, right? It's setting pre-having him, right, the fertility journey, I know our embryos were so, so, so much healthier because of it. And then pregnant, and now having him too, it was all meant to be to have him set up for so much health and success.
Absolutely. That's such a big positive side effect of having the time, like the preconception time, to really work on your health and your healing. You absolutely are supporting the lifelong health of your future tiny human once they do arrive, for sure. Well, talking about embryos, we ended up working together for a while, and then you ended up doing another retrieval, right?
Yes.
How did that go?
Yeah, I think this is just the best because you and I are both so into evidence-based, science-based stuff, right? Before and after, cause and effect. And so again, before working with Brooke, I was 31, did IVF. We made 3 embryos, only one of which was genetically normal. And then when I got pregnant, had a loss. We did a transfer like 6 months later, and that embryo was like very, very low quality. Again, I was 31 and healthy going into it. So we were so confused that transfer didn't work. And then with working with Brooke, changing so much about my diet, how, we operate with how we, or excuse me, going through like more meditation and focusing my mental health too, right? All those pieces. It wasn't just physical, because I just was running so raw with everything, with work and life and everything. So going through all that, then we found, not only working with Brooke, we also found a new fertility doctor, which was, besides for working with Brooke, the biggest game changer for my husband and I, because she looks under the hood, does a ton of research. It was very, very custom approached. If anyone is in Orange County, I couldn't recommend our doctor enough. If anybody needs a referral, my husband and I always say if we lived across the world, we would fly back to work with her, and same with you. But we changed a little bit with the IVF protocol. She adjusted kind of medication a little bit more closely just to make sure I was responding, and, making as many eggs as possible. And that definitely worked. But then the craziest results were, so I was a year older, right? Which in fertility years, they make you think everything is going to get worse with every year that goes by. You just get older, and that means your eggs get older and everything declines. That was not the case at all. We ended up getting 15 eggs retrieved, which was double the amount. And then all of them were mature. And then through, all the science they do with getting them down to embryos and then testing them, we had 7 genetically and high quality embryos after that. After that, what's it called? Egg retrieval. And the whole process was so different. And yeah, we had better results than we ever could have hoped for. Our IVF doctor prepped us. She's like, okay, I want to get at least 3 healthy, high quality embryos. That's my goal, because that's 3 times what you got. And then we got 7. So
That's amazing.
everything worked very, very, very well, and we couldn't believe it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is a really big difference, and it definitely speaks to your commitment and your husband's commitment to the nutrition and lifestyle changes that you were working on. Certainly, like working with a doctor that was more in tuned to you guys as individuals, absolutely plays a positive role in that too. Yes. And so baby Casey was one of those embryos, but you did end up transferring an embryo before that, right?
Yeah, so a couple months after, because we wanted to celebrate the win instead of rush right into a transfer, and also give my body time after egg retrievals, because, a lot goes into that, right? So I wanted to make sure we gave a couple months to just chill and get centered, and then we had a transfer not work, which was, people who haven't gone through IVF don't know that it feels, everybody's different, of course, but it feels very much like a miscarriage, right? So you have the embryo, you're so hopeful, it's in your belly, and then it doesn't work. And that was so heartbreaking, just because we were on this high of everything going well. We thought everything was lined up. We just were so certain it was going to work. And then, God in the universe, for whatever reason, had other plans. And it was, again, all looking back, how it happened was all very meant to be, because after that, I took another couple months off and we went into our doctor a couple months after that transfer didn't work. And I had a cyst inside of my ovary. I'd had that for a couple years. It started growing kind of out of nowhere, and it hadn't before, through 2 egg retrievals, lots of procedures and things. And my IVF doctor was heartbroken for us. She was like, I think you might have endometriosis. This looks like a flare-up. And prior to that, so to take a step back, after we did everything right for this egg retrieval. We did all the testing, Alice, Emma, Receptiva, I think all those are the right names. And Receptiva tests for endometriosis, and that was negative. So the test was wrong, which kind of makes sense because endometriosis, now I know, grows outside of the uterus, and the test scrapes inside the uterus, so it's not always right, is what our IVF doctor said. So we ended up, it was a very hard choice because I didn't obviously not want to have surgery, and that would put us, a couple months behind. But I had always, since I was about 21, had horrible period cramps, and nothing worked. I literally tried everything for my whole life, from Chinese herbs, acupuncture, restriction, adding things, every supplement on the planet, and nothing helped. So that was kind of my light bulb when my husband and I were deciding what to do, was, well, this can't hurt our chances, and also at least I won't have bad period cramps, hopefully, anymore. And so we ended up finding a surgeon in LA through a referral from an acupuncturist of mine who specialized in endo, which was such a blessing. Again, looking back, the surgery wasn't for the faint of heart. It was, a little bit of a tough recovery for a couple days, and then I think about a month later, I was totally fine. But yeah, I had endometriosis growing on both of my ovaries, but nowhere else. So was thankful for that. It hadn't spread super far, but all of it was removed. And then I knew I needed a little bit more time just to heal from that surgery. My IVF doctor wanted to go in 2 months later, and I just knew my body wasn't healed yet, and mental health wise, I wanted to get into a better place. So we waited until the new year, and then finally my IVF doctor, who we trust at the same level of Brooke, she was like, Christina, I think you kind of have to do it now. You did this whole surgery. We can't wait 5 months. Let's get back in there. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, I'm scared, but I'm ready. I'm never going to feel 100% after what we've been through. I kind of realized that. I thought there would be this light bulb of, okay, like everything's perfect and I'm ready. And that's just not going to be the case when you had a long journey, I think. And then, yeah, we did our second transfer with that batch of embryos. And I'm trying to think what we did differently. She did estrogen priming. I know with the egg retrieval, that was different than we did before. And then with this transfer, what we did was, I forget what it's called, Brooke, you might know. It's where I did like a fat injection with like egg whites and stuff a couple times. Do you know what that's called? I forget.
I don't know the technical name for that. No.
But yeah, I think that was the only thing we did differently for this transfer. And she also, which I never like taking medication, but my doctor knew me too well, and she was like, I want to give you a Xanax before the transfer, so you're really relaxed. And we also had an acupuncturist come in before and after, because they work, my IVF doctor, acupuncturist actually work together. So she came in before and after the transfer, which I think I was just so relaxed because I had a Xanax for the first time ever, and then had acupuncture. So I was just like so chill that day. Took a nap, which I could never do. And then, yeah, a week later, I always remember this. My husband and I, we were going on a walk, and I was so freaked out to take a pregnancy test. Like, I can't do it. I can't look at it. I'm just like, I thought I was getting period cramps, like pre-period cramps. My stomach felt weird. I had spotting the day before, and I was like, I can't do this again. And then, so after we went on a walk, peed on a stick, and I was like, I can't look at it. I can't look at it. And then he looked, he's like, you're pregnant. And I just always remember we both like collapsed to the floor. And it was, besides for meeting Casey, it was the happiest moment of our life. It was just everything. Like, we just both felt this like weight release because we knew everything would be different. It was just that like intuition of, okay, this time everything's gonna be smooth and okay. And it was for the most part. So yeah. Sorry, I don't even remember what your question was. I hope I answered it.
It's okay. I don't either. That's the best news, though. Yes, finally got that BFP. And in between all of the retrieval and the transfer and everything, Christina was and I were doing check-ins on what was going on with blood work and gut health and just shifting what was happening with her recommendations around things like supplements and nutrition along the way based on how things were changing. With IVF, but also just with life in general, there's going to be different exposures that are happening to change things along the way. So, when Christina was having certain symptoms or just feeling like intuitively like we need to do a test at this time, based on what's coming up with like transfer, for instance, and check in.
We did a GI map test, right? Like a month or two before, right? Because I remember I was like, I feel
Yeah.
like I got food poisoning. Something feels off. And you're like, we have to test this. And yeah, that I think helped so much because I just felt like there was inflammation in my body that I don't think would have resolved if you hadn't have tested for that.
Yeah, I think it was something along the lines of food poisoning. But yeah, pre-transfer in general, like definitely helpful information to have from a GI map, which is a stool sample. We're learning all about that bacterial balance in your gut, what's happening with digestion and absorption of food, nutrients, and definitely immune system health. So, a lot of inflammation can be stemming from the gut and impacting what's happening with that bacterial environment in your uterine environment, and really how our ability to implant an embryo, because there has to be certain immune system shifts that happen with implantation, and actually what's underlying with just our bacterial environment in our gut and our body as a whole can play a role in that for sure. So I believe you did a little protocol as far as supplements go right before transfer for that.
Yeah. Yeah, you shifted a couple things for sure. And then I feel like I probably have to be the client who's messaged you the most questions
No.
ever. Is that true? Is that
I'm
true?
sure.
Are you sure? I feel like because I mean, yeah, that's the other big piece, Brooke, that I hope I've, always told you how much I appreciate you. And, I don't know if little Casey would be here if it wasn't for you for sure. But yeah, the other thing that I always think about that I'm just so thankful is because throughout every stage of the journey, preconception, right, working with you, and then while I was pregnant, having a couple of sessions, and then postpartum, right, somebody who kind of knows you through the whole process. Because I think so many times in women's health, right, you have your IVF doctor, and then you graduate to your OB, and then
Right.
nobody checks on you after you have a baby. Like you go through this crazy thing, and there's like 6-week checkup, everything looks good, and that I've had somebody who knows me, knows my case, knows my history, right? I think that's why I've been able to, make such strides throughout the whole journey is because you've been holding my hand through it and shifting things too, right? There were times where even my OB would tell me to do something and I'd message you, be like, hey, she's telling me to take this product and there's a red dye in it. Do you have a different suggestion? 'Cause I don't feel like I want to take this, Like, just so many little things too that have been so, so helpful to bounce ideas off of you.
So fun to continue to support you through pregnancy and postpartum as well. Before we talk a little bit more about that, though, I want to touch on some other like positive side effects that you ended up seeing during the preconception piece. So, because I was able to support Christina for a couple of years, we were checking in on all sorts of things, but she would message me and And one thing that really stands out, I mean, there's several, there's a lot of things that really stand out, but positive things is increased body temperature. I forget exactly what point in time that became relevant in your like in between retrieval and transfer. But we'd been working together for at least a year, and I think you had just gotten back from a vacation and noted that you're not feeling cold all the time anymore. You don't need a jacket all the time anymore. And that your basal body temperature had actually increased also. So not only are you feeling it, you're seeing it. Yeah.
Brooke, I honestly, I forgot that happened. I forgot that happened. Like, that's the craziest thing with symptoms. I've been cold my whole life, like cold hands and feet, and I just thought that was how I was wired. And you're right, now I totally forgot. But yeah, I came back from a trip after I think eating differently, supplement deletes and adds, right? Just all the lifestyle change. I was like, oh my God, I'm not cold anymore. I used to always have to have a sweatshirt on. And I think part of that too, I was just so undernourished, right? So gaining some weight back and eating correctly, right? I think my system just got so regulated working with you. And then also, now that I'm remembering too, I mean, my period cramps weren't ever great, but I would have a lot of clotting. And then I remember after like 6 months of working together, I didn't really have big clots coming out anymore too, which was a huge, huge shift that I just, again, as women, you just kind of think things are normal and nobody has a solution for you when you go to the OB when you're younger. So you're like, okay, this is how it's going to be. And those little things that end up being big tweaks, right, for our body that we just needed but didn't know there was a solution for.
Yeah, it's crazy when we learn that things are not normal or might be common, but not normal, which is a super important distinction throughout everything women's health, I would say. And then the one or a couple other things were you used to have a lot of headaches, right?
Yes. Yeah, I struggled with really, really bad migraines for a couple years and neck pain. This was even pre-concept or pre trying to conceive. It was in my late 20s. And I'd tried to fix it for so long and little things would help here and there, but it was still a pretty consistent thing. And I think a lot of it for sure was stress and not eating enough. I was avoiding a lot of meat too, which now is just crazy looking back on what I was eating before. I was probably eating like 20 grams of protein a day. I'm not kidding, like best case. And yeah, that before even getting pregnant, I barely had any headaches and no neck pain. And then throughout being pregnant, postpartum too, like I've had a couple here and there, but nothing like I thought, because of so many of my friends who had migraines pre having a baby, they said it got worse when you're pregnant and worse postpartum. So I was really freaked out that they were going to come back.
Yay for not coming back. That can definitely be. I mean, there's various triggers for migraines, but sometimes they are triggered by certain mineral imbalances and depletion, even just like nervous system response, which also plays into what's happening with your whole mineral response. And pregnancy is very naturally depleting because baby's taking so much from you. So if you're going in depleted, it's highly likely that those migraines are going to get worse, and then certainly postpartum as well, which is a very, very depleting stage. Also, so yay for no more migraines or neck pain, or very much less frequently, anyways.
Oh, yeah. Like I get them probably like 2% of the time that I used to get them, and it's usually from, a stressful day, right? Or something triggering it. It's not from just like a random headache like I used to get where there was no rhyme or reason. Now I'm like, oh, I know exactly why I got a headache.
Good, good.
Thinking back to of when I would get headaches, when I do a mineral cocktail and just have more magnesium and the kind of magnesium, because I always would take a magnesium supplement, but it was the magnesium glycinate you had me take, right? And now if I'm ever feeling like, ooh, I might be getting a headache, if I do a mineral cocktail, 9 times out of 10, it just goes away. My husband's like, just take an Advil, it's fine. I'm like, I'm just gonna do my cocktail first and then we'll see. And that usually takes care of it, which is just insane. Those little shifts that can have such a big impact.
Yes, especially with nursing, those mineral balances can change. But yeah, any stage, the minerals are super supportive, um, which can definitely correspond with stress. Anytime we're under internal or external stress, we're using up more minerals. So if those are depleting kind of in the background, we might get a symptom like a headache. So that's awesome that that's continuing to work for you too. Overall, how was your pregnancy or your experience being pregnant?
So it was good, but I will say the hormones messed with me. I mean, you know this. We had some calls where I feel like I was literally going insane, more so postpartum. But Casey was healthy and perfect the whole time. The first trimester, I did have something called a subchorionic hematoma, or an SCH, which was very scary for women who don't know and men listening. It's where spotting or significant bleeding happens, because there's a hematoma between the baby and the uterus, I believe. So it creates spotting. So I thought I was miscarrying. It was very, very scary. There was one day where I was hemorrhaging. It was like gushing out blood every time I stood up. It was very scary. And we had the most wonderful IVF doctor who got me in on a Sunday to check, and Casey was perfect, and it was an indicator of who he is as a little boy, tough as nails. Literally nothing phases him. Like, I remember having that feeling like, okay, if he's fine with all this bleeding going on, he's going to be a tough little brute. Like, he's going to be fine. But I was on bed rest for like a month just because my IVF doctor's like, I'm not messing around. Like, we are not going to do anything that, where it's going to stress you out. Like, we're just going to do everything super safe, which I'm very, very thankful for. Even though it wasn't probably necessary, right? A lot of my friends have had them and aren't on bed rest, but I think with where my mental state was at, I just needed to know I was doing everything I could and being safe. And then it ended up resolving on its own. One of the zillion messages I messaged you about was asking what I can do holistically, because my doctor was just like, you just do bed rest, whatever. And we worked together on a couple things, which was great. And then, yeah, I had some morning sickness, but it wasn't bad. And then, yeah, everything, I'm trying to think, was very, very smooth. Second trimester, he was growing perfectly healthy. Every scan was great. We had to do a couple of error scans just with IVF. They checked the heart rate, the heart and everything. And yeah, everything, I felt great after that first trimester. Had really good energy. A lot of people I know, you're tired the whole time. I literally never was tired, even when I'd have some like insomnia and only sleep 3 or 4 hours. I felt really, really good. And yeah, I'm trying to think. Do you remember anything else? Because we had a couple calls. I'm trying to think. This was only a year ago, but it feels like so long ago.
So long ago, yeah. I think a little bit of like reflux and some digestive changes, which can be definitely combination of like hormones and just, yeah, pregnancy.
Yes. The reflex thing was like a couple weeks. I forget what you had me do, but I think it was apple cider vinegar, and I think that fixed it. I think I'd have bone broth in the morning and then just pour some apple cider vinegar in it, and then I think that healed it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Does that sound right? Or am I making it up with something else?
And I don't think you're making that up. I don't remember what exactly helped you, but a lot of times, like bitter foods and apple cider vinegar, which is like a bitter, also can stimulate our enzymes. Reflux is often a sign of low enzymes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what it was too. Yeah, I remember. Now I'm remembering we had a call because I was having the reflux, and then I started getting nauseous at the beginning of the third trimester, like very seasick. I was never throwing up. And I remember being like, what is this? I feel the same as first trimester, just not throwing up. And you were like, just add bitters. So I remember I'd squeeze like lemon into sparkling water and do like arugula. And then on the days where I would do bitter stuff, I never had any nausea. So Brooke knows what she's doing. Like literally any little thing I ask him, like, this is so random. I shouldn't bother her with this, but my OB isn't helpful. And then you would tell me to do something, and within a day it would be gone.
Well, I'm glad it was all supportive. You should never hesitate to reach out. I think that's something that I tell all of my private clients, like anytime you have a question, let me know. I'll let you know if it warrants a meeting or anything, but a lot of the times I can just support you with a message. All this information should be way easier to grab a hold of or, be coming to us normally. But it's just the world is not working in that way right now. Maybe someday we will have more holistic approach to overall women's health, but I'm happy to be that resource.
For sure. And the other piece, Brooke, which I don't know if you saw this was, I think, the biggest game changer supplement you had me take, which I just saw they're discontinuing it, which I'm so bummed, is the Nourish Nerves. That supplement got me through anytime I was anxious in the fertility journey and pregnant. Taking that was like instant edge off. If I was spiraling, that was like instantly would fix it. So I'm really sad they're not making that anymore because that was such a good recommendation by you.
I love that tincture as well. I'm super sad that they're discontinuing it too. I do have a substitute, so you can message me if you want. um,
Okay, cool. And I don't know, Brooke, how with certain things, right? And there's probably a wide range of people who you work with who are super holistic and then super Western and, not alternative, which is totally great either way. But I will say if anybody's ever looking for, a resource that is more holistic, because every time I would ask my OB, they were like, you can't take that. There's no studies. It's not safe, And then when I would reach out to you, I just knew like, okay, I know this is safe because Brooke knows the science, right? Like this herbal blend is safe, and they make you think anything you take that isn't Tylenol or Pepcid or something is going to harm your baby. There's so much fear, I feel like, that is put on women when they're pregnant. And I definitely felt that too, of being nervous, like, is this the right thing to take? But I followed my intuition. Same thing with when I was in the first trimester. I forgot to mention this. When I had the SEH, I took, because my acupuncturist has been studying Chinese medicine for like 30 years. She was like, just trust me, this thing is called Secure the Fetus. It's this it's this Chinese medicine blend. And within like 5 days, my thing started shrinking. 2 weeks, it kept growing and growing. Right. So anybody who's listening, if you ever have an intuition of exploring something alternative and your doctor makes you nervous, just do your research. And everybody has different comfort levels, right? But I did things that were very different than what my OB told me. And my son is downstairs. I can hear him laughing right now, and he is perfectly healthy. And we did things my OB said, didn't have research behind them. So
yeah, a lot of, I mean, say conventionally trained doctors are very hesitant with herbs, but we actually do have a fair amount of research around a fair amount of herbs that can be extremely supportive, and definitely don't have the side effects of some things that our traditional doctors are comfortable with, like our Tylenol or our Pepcid. Like those have a fair amount of side effects. So yeah, definitely listen to that intuition and don't be afraid to seek additional recommendations elsewhere, because it can do a lot of good. No matter what phase you are, preconception, pregnancy, postpartum. throughout the whole journey for sure. All right, Christina. So if you were to be chatting with somebody who was in a similar place that you were before we started working together, so having already had a rough journey, rough first experience with IVF, what would you tell them? Do you have any advice for somebody that might be in that spot or a similar spot?
I would say if being a mom is on your heart and you know you want that for yourself, do not give up. Even when it gets hard, pause, take breaks, don't rush. I learned the hard way that rushing your body to get somewhere isn't going to necessarily get you the results you want, but being patient and mindful and just envisioning that baby in your arms and knowing it might not be next month that you get your positive pregnancy test. It might be longer, but just know that, if you make the tweaks and stay committed, it is very, 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 very likely and possible that even when things seem dark and like they're not going to be possible, that, I thought this wasn't going to happen for us, and it was a 5-year journey from starting to getting pregnant, right? And it is a long journey, not for the faint of heart, but it is so, so, so worth it to keep going and stay committed, because having a baby, especially after having a long journey to him, you just cherish it in a way that, I don't think I would have if it would have happened really fast. And also, following your intuition and your gut, just because your doctor tells you to do something, if you have a little hesitation, listen to it, ask questions. Just because your doctor tells you to do something or it's their advice, that doesn't mean that you can't have an opinion, that you can't advocate for yourself and do your own research. Because looking back on the first time we did IVF, right? And so many times that's so great, right? People go into IVF and it works the first time. That's not saying, everything's going to be in the way that it worked out for us. But now looking back, I wish I had done more research on not only the doctor, but also the process, and really understood what questions to ask and how to support my body. And also, I would say too, which I wanted to mention, is I feel like now looking back, I had so much shame that even after working with you, and I was so hopeful, like maybe I'll get pregnant naturally between, this IVF and egg retrieval, and knowing that it's okay to do both, right? Some people, I believe a high percentage of your clients work with you and don't need IVF even when they're told that's the only option, which is the best. And I was selfishly hoping I was going to be one of those cases. And maybe I would, who knows if we would have kept going. But yeah, I think going at it from both angles is okay. And you're not giving up or failing just because you need additional Western support. Both can live together. And, yeah, I just felt like that was hard for me to wrap my head around for a little bit.
For sure. Yeah. And IVF and just reproductive technology as a whole, like even like your IUI or medications to support your cycle to conceive, they are amazing tools. And we do know that they work even better with the nutrition and lifestyle approach combined with them. So, you might not ever be in a place where you are feeling like, yes, IVF is absolutely the answer. But if you're at a point just in your life that it feels like it's a good next step for you, giving it a shot can be very worthwhile. And it doesn't mean that everything you've been doing to support natural conception isn't going to pay off, because it absolutely does. And egg quality, and I mean, Christina is a prime example of what it looks like to have a retrieval depleted versus a retrieval after, really focusing on adding a lot of foods back in and increasing protein and minerals, and getting a lot more embryos, healthy, genetically perfect embryos. Um, and yeah, so it speaks a lot towards how you can support that reproductive technology piece with nutrition and lifestyle and a more holistic approach for sure.
Sorry, just one other little thing that I thought of too is I was very private with my journey, and I think it was everybody operates differently, right? But I would just say that sometimes people love to give advice and it's not helpful. So I was really mindful of who I kind of trusted. So just making sure that women don't feel alone, that you have a team, you know, whether it's a best friend, your husband, therapist, a Brooke, you know, just so you're not doing it alone. Because I think for so long I was trying to bootstrap it on my own and it was really isolating and hard, especially because when all of your friends are getting pregnant around you, nobody is having issues and you don't have anybody to ask. Like you need to have a somebody to talk to, even who's not your husband. Like I had someone who specialized in fertility, which again, sometimes with access, I know that's not realistic for everybody, but if you do have the means to, you know, have someone to talk to outside of a close family member, that was a huge game changer for my mental health too, of processing the journey, you know. And I think it's hard to gear up and talk about hard stuff, right? But I think processing our journey was really, really helpful and healing for me too, to getting Casey in our arms. And I was kind of resistant to that for quite a few years. I was just focusing on physical. You know, it's like, okay, it's just food I'm eating, supplements. Like, okay, I can will this into existence, you know? And then when I kind of started doing my own spiritual and emotional work with a therapist, as well as just finding what that meditation practice looks like for me, is when I realized, oh, I've just been pushing for so long and I haven't paused and really given myself space to process and feel those moments of peace throughout the day, you know?
Yeah, that's such good advice. Your mental health is such a big part of it. No part of a fertility journey is typically easy when it's a journey, right? When you're struggling to conceive and looking at reproductive technology in any fashion, protecting your mental health is so important, and knowing when to take a step back and take a break is going to be very valuable for when you do get that positive pregnancy test, because it doesn't get easier from there. It's your mental health is important through pregnancy and through postpartum for many reasons.
Yeah, and having those practices too, Brooke, too, the talking about pregnancy, if I didn't had those tools leading up for it, I know now looking back that my journey was prepping me for my pregnancy and for motherhood. If I didn't have these tools that I developed during our fertility journey, I think I would just be so out of my body and in stress mode, right? But now I can feel like when I'm stressed or off, and I have the tools to regulate myself now, which I didn't have. And I don't think if I hadn't have gone on this journey, I wouldn't have had those tools again. So it's one of the positives of going through what I went through, for sure. It made me a better mom and better wife and all those things.
Absolutely. I love that. Yay. Um, One more question for you. What would you tell other women or couples that might be on the fence of investing in a program that is focused on the nutrition and lifestyle piece of fertility support?
Do it. Do it, do it, do it. It I know looking back on who I was when I first started with Brooke, I was like, "Oh, I just wanna be pregnant. I want it to happen now," right? And I think having that patience to sign up for something like this, focusing on the nutrition and knowing it is very, very, very likely, nothing's a guarantee, but it's very, very likely going to get you your baby and have not only good results, but also the healthiest baby possible, right? Like we talked about earlier about Casey's health, you know, and all that stuff pays off and impacts, which people don't always think about, right? Preconception. Um, so yeah, I would, if you have the means to work with Brooke privately, I've sent quite a few friends. My husband and I always we literally talk about Brooke at least once a week about, oh, we need to eat this, we need to do this. It's been such a cool lifestyle change too, I would say, for my husband. I've always been into this world, obviously not always doing it correctly until I met you, but always eating, organically and trying to do all the right things and all that. But working together too on this, I will say, any guys listening, if it's just a woman listening, send this to your husband too, because it is also, sorry, I have so much advice. It is a team effort. And for the beginning of our fertility journey, as a woman, you think it's your faults, even when there's no data and they say it's, unexplained. I think women just tend to blame themselves and do it alone. And then again, after working with you, Brooke, it was just as much about my health as about Kyle's, which once we worked here, I was like, oh, duh, he's 50% of the genes going into this. Like, we both need to work on this together. And Kyle was so committed too, because he wanted to be a dad and for us to be parents more than anything. So having your partner be on your team, right, and supporting each other through it versus the woman kind of doing it alone and doing all the research. I would say anything the husband can do or the partner can do to support your person through this so they're not bearing it all alone, because it is a lot. And working with you, Brooke, too, again, before and after with IVF, the first time we did IVF, I was giving myself all the shots, managing, doing everything kind of alone. And then the next year after we worked together, I'm like, we need to do this together. This isn't me alone. So every night we'd blast music. He'd give me my progesterone shot in my butt. Like, we'd, do all that stuff together as a team. And I think all that energy and camaraderie, right, just makes such a big difference. And that all started because we started working with you.
So important. Yes, it is a team sport, everybody. It cannot be done on your own. Yeah, I mean, male fertility is so under supported. Even if that semen analysis is quote unquote normal, they're typically not optimal. They're typically pretty far from optimal. So boosting up those swimmers, the quality of them makes a huge, huge difference, because it definitely impacts the health of your pregnancy. Like even things like morning sickness, risk factors that come with the placenta, like preeclampsia, is actually more due to the sperm health. Okay. So what you're going to experience during pregnancy and then the lifelong health of your future tiny human, like 50% of that depends on the sperm. So yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So important that your male partner is on board as well for all these changes. Christina, I could keep talking to you probably for a couple more hours, but I do have to wrap it up. I really appreciate you being here and sharing your story.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Sorry I rambled. I don't talk about this openly very much, so I don't have succinct answers. Like I said, I was so private. My husband before, he's like, you're doing that? You're going to talk about all this? I'm like, yes, it is our duty to pay this forward. If it helps one person who's going through what we went through, we got to do this kind of stuff. So thank you so much for being such a light to us, a resource, and we couldn't be more thankful to have had you in our corner for the last 3 years now and moving forward too.
Thank you so much. It's been so much fun supporting you. And I know this will help probably many more than one person, one couple.
Thanks, Brooke. You're the best.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fertility Dietitian podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review to let me know what topics you want more of or less of. If you want to keep learning, subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out my website for more info on my private coaching program, Master Your Fertility, or my membership community, Fertility Blueprint. And don't forget my digital store. Come say hi on YouTube and Instagram. See you in the next episode.